Hi and good evening, everybody. Tonight I'm going to be taking you through a financial wellbeing webinar, Mastering the Art of Financial Goal Setting, and subtitled Give Every Dollar a Purpose. This evening we haven't got any live attendees, but what I intend to do is talk through the content of tonight's material, and if you have any questions or would like to discuss anything with me further, I'll let you know at the end of the session how you can get in contact with me. So I hope this is really helpful for you as you listen back to it. I know everyone's very busy studying and working and balancing everything. So sometimes we don't always get everybody attending live. But yeah, looking forward to you watching back and getting some real value from this session. So a big welcome to everybody and thank you to listening back for this recording. This is where I usually acknowledge, and I will acknowledge, all the amazing work that you're all doing, studying at Southern Cross University. There's so much that's going on and so much wonderful impact that you're all making to our future. So thank you for all your hard work. And just to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands from which we're all connecting as you're listening back to this live webinar. I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and recognise and celebrate their connection and role in caring for country over thousands of years. May their wisdom and strength be with us today. Just a little quick bit about myself before I jump into the content for tonight. My name's Liz McLardy. A couple of my background symbols here to share with you a little bit about myself. So I'm a CPA, an accountant by trade. So I've been a CPA, now a fellow CPA, and started my career working in corporate, really around accounting, so helping those who are in management positions to help them to make good financial decisions about really directing their area of the business to achieve its strategic goals. I then moved into education, worked at Southern Cross University teaching both undergrad and postgraduate programs in accounting and strategic management accounting. I worked at CPA Australia, Swinburne University, so it's a little bit of background about myself. During the COVID period, I also completed a diploma in financial counselling, knowing that my finance skills are what I can help people. It's the area I can help people with. So I also have a bit of background in counselling and financial counselling and personal finance from that basis. So we've partnered with the SCPA to really provide postgraduate students with some resources to hopefully help alleviate stress that you may have around your finances, and to be here to deliver content through webinars and also to be available for one-on-one discussions if that would be something that's helpful to you. So in tonight's session, a little bit about what we're going to cover. This session will probably be quicker than it would be live, as we usually have interactions from those who've attended. But firstly, we're going to have a look at why goal setting is really the foundation to financial freedom, why it's so important, how to set financial goals, really powerful ones, and then how to give every dollar a purpose. So we'll work through a couple of these different points tonight. A lot of what we'll talk through tonight is not overly sophisticated. Likely you've heard most of it before. Maybe it will just ring true, or maybe it's a nice reminder. But hopefully it might even just prompt you to perhaps take action in an area of life where you may feel maybe discouraged, or you are just not as motivated, but hopefully, talking through some of what we do tonight might allow it to seem more accessible and motivating for you as well, to make your sort of personal finances less of a trouble, so you can get on and do the things that you love, like your study and your work. So let's get into it. So here was an icebreaker activity that we won't do as we haven't got live attendees, but you can reflect on this yourself and pause this video at any stage. So interesting to think about, if your money could talk, what would it say about you? So thinking about the relationship that you have with money can be helpful. Sometimes we're so busy, thinking about our physical health, just busy with normal day-to-day activities. We don't actually stop to check in and just, think about our relationship with money. and it's likely that it probably causes more stress than joy in our lives. So it'd be really, quite a useful exercise to sort of sit down and have a little bit of a think through, what would it say about you, or what would it even say to you? So have a go at that. Because we're talking about financial goals tonight, in this slide, I really wanted to illustrate and to really, spark some motivation and interest, why set a financial goal. And I guess, a lot of this, again, will be quite similar to what you might have come across to do with any goals. If it's to do with health and fitness goals, we know that having goals enables you to take, direct action towards achieving them. The same as with financial goals. If we just carry around with us, all these ideas of how things should be better, or I should be this or that, you can never actually feel positive about it and like you're making progress. So really important to think about and to give yourself some time and space to structure some financial goals, because they will empower you. They give you a sense of control, give you the reins back of the horse, as I've got illustrated there. So often with our finances, it feels more like we're riding a wild horse with no reins. But if you're setting financial goals, it allows you to sort of get more control back and give you more confidence and direction about where you are actually going, and thinking about your own personal situation and what are the things that are important to you. We can find that it's usually a very dissatisfying topic. Most of us are comparing ourselves with other people who are at different stages or parts of their life, or have been through different things. But what financial goals, personal ones, do is it gives us really that focus, that opportunity to really think about where we are, what we're doing, what are the financial resources that we have, and what are we going to do with them. And a couple of quotes you'll see in the slides to come. Many of them I'm so sure you've heard before, but a goal without a plan is just a wish. So really important that we also, once we come up with the goals, what is it that we want to achieve, that we've got a plan then. That's the starting point. It's the route. And then we can set out our plans and steps from there. But that's why the goal is so important. We've got to be clear on that first, and then set out the plan. Financial goals also help us to clarify what's important in life. They illuminate possibilities that can sometimes feel, invisible or not there, because if we don't actually sit down and think, what is it that I want to achieve financially? They're often obviously interlinked with other things that we're wanting to achieve in life. So it's like in a business, your finances, your HR department, your IT, they're all support activities, for the core business. So it can be helpful to think about that in your own personal life and personal finances, is that you'll have your own ambitions and things that you want to achieve, but you've got to, really draw upon those support services of your finances and how you manage them, the systems, the processes, the strategic goal setting. Really, really can be helpful sometimes to think about your own life as a business, not necessarily to maybe more as a non-for-profit if you're wanting to achieve a particular mission, but it is also okay to have a goal to achieve a particular profit as well. So in this next part of the webinar, we're just kind of talking a little bit about different types of goals. So here we're looking at short-term goals. So because often what we find is when we're thinking about our finances is that we'll have a lot of different goals, and most of the time the ones that we're thinking about are usually brought on by something that's happened. So it might be that, we see an ad for something and it makes us think, oh, I need to do some investing. And then you hear an article in the paper about something to do with housing. You think, oh, I really need to save up. I need to buy a house. And then another ad or somebody else is talking about somewhere they've traveled to, and think, oh, I really want to travel to there. So you have all of these different goals and all have financial impacts all swirling through your head, and you never feel satisfied because you're not quite sure which ones, and you don't really, we're so busy we don't get the time to kind of sit down and think through it structurally. But one helpful thing to think about is also just categorizing different types of goals, and one way is looking at short-term goals. So they are usually things that you want to achieve within a year. So that can be a helpful way to categorize them. So we've got some examples here, you know, things like, you know, maybe saving up for a wedding or paying off credit card debt, creating an emergency fund, saving for a holiday. You might have some minor repairs or home improvements that you want to do. So things that you can achieve within that 12-month period. Really important, as we'll talk a couple, it's a common thread, as you'll see, SMART goals, which I'm sure many of you have come across before, that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So that's really the essence of what makes a good goal, because if it's not following that acronym, it's not. So for example, if it wasn't specific, it makes that goal so much less powerful. It doesn't make it clear on what you need to achieve, doesn't make it doesn't enable you to achieve it. So yes, so short-term goals is a good way of classifying. An example of the SMART goals, 2 examples here, you know, to pay off $3,000 of credit card debt in 6 months. Even to improve that, you know, put in the actual date. So if that's, you know, the 30th of December 2025, and then so that's the goal. And then after that, as we shared that quote about the plan, you would then work out, okay, if that's my goal, what's my plan to get there? So if I've got to pay off $3,000 in 6 months, how much does that mean I need to put away each week, or depending on the frequency in which you get paid? So you can clearly then have a plan for that, and where you can automate that, the better. So if you can then set that up, that would be good. Same here. So for example 2, say $5,000 for a Japan holiday in 12 months time. So another good example. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable. That's always personal. So assuming this is achievable. But again, I would be suggesting to give that time frame a little bit more specificity. So include the date would be great. And here's another little prompt to think about, you know, thinking about, you know, pausing the video here and listing out, you know, what are some of your short-term goals that you'd like to achieve? So something in the next 6 months, or a couple of things, even writing them all down, getting them all out. So you can then look at, you know, challenging them or prioritizing them. At the end of the session, I'll show you a little exercise of, you know, sometimes we do have all of these goals swirling around, and how we can actually approach them, and what order would be a smart way to work through them. Another way to think about goals is looking at the long term. So, and the way that I'm talking this through in terms of, you know, the categorization of short and long is also what they do for businesses as well. So if you're putting together a financial plan or helping a business to run, you'll do a detailed 12-month plan, which would have its budget linked to it. So you'd be thinking about, what am I trying to achieve? And then what are the financial resources that I need to actually achieve those outcomes? And what are my options and things like that? And then they'd also look at longer term goals. So for a business, they would likely look to 5 years and look at, okay, what is my 5-year plan of what am I trying to achieve? Where do I want to be in the market? What do I need to do to enable that? For personal life, we may also want to extend that and look at, you know, in the next 5 years, where would you like to be? And describing that and thinking about that, and 10 years, 20 years. So not only materially in terms of perhaps it's you'd like to see yourself, you know, being able to buy a home and then being able to pay it off and then being able to retire. But what also is helpful when you're thinking about these financial goals is thinking about how you would feel as well. So because then that can actually help you in terms of that plan of, how am I going to achieve that? There's lots of different ways to achieve goals. So that's when you can get into that planning stage and be creative about, what are my options? Instead of setting a goal and going, oh no, I just don't think that's possible, but giving yourself that space to kind of brainstorm and think about it, or maybe have a bit of a rollback to that goal setting. So it might be that you then modify the goal slightly and then work that through and see if it's achievable. And then if that's achievable, great. If it's not, then go back again. You know, what are some of the options? What could I change about this? It may not be a house that looked like that, but it may be a different kind of house, a smaller house, or whatever it might be. So it's good for us to sort of challenge some of those ideas that we have. Some examples of these longer term goals of saving for a home, paying off a mortgage, planning for retirement, starting a business. So really important that you're personalizing all of these and not looking. You can obviously look to others to get ideas and you know, might prompt us to think, oh, that's something that I'd like to do. But make sure that you're always challenging that and ensuring that those goals are aligned with your life aspirations, but giving yourself space to also change. So as we go through, and particularly in this longer term goal setting stage, there may be things that once you've 5 years have passed, that 10 or 20-year goal may have changed, circumstances may have changed. So it's important to know yourself. If you're someone who, once they set a goal, they really want it to be that, and it gets sort of set in stone, but to bring in some flexibility, that you can challenge those goals, and something you thought that you wanted may not be. So yeah, it's an iterative, evolving process. But what I guess I'm encouraging is making space for thinking and working through your finances. If it's once a week or monthly, a space to not only, look at the dollars and cents, but work through some of these activities where you're thinking through, what are my goals? What have I achieved? Where am I? And then making some plans. All of those things bring so much more satisfaction to your relationship with money, as opposed to it just being something that you don't really think too much about, or that you might think negatively about. So yeah, some of these activities can be really a positive influence on that relationship. And it's, thinking about those long and short-term goals, it's really a balance. If you've only got so many financial resources at any stage, you might have lots of goals. And how do you, allocate money to all of them? How can you do all of them? And I'm going to really touch on this right at the end of having a way of actually approaching that. If you've got too many things going on, you won't feel like you're making progress on anything. So better to break it down and maybe have a more of a staged approach, as opposed to trying to do too many things at once. So a great place to start is firstly understanding your current situation. So before really setting and getting an idea of what it is that goals you're going to set yourself, is to create what I call it's a snapshot. Really, it's your own personal balance sheet, or I call it my financial resources. So we've got a little snapshot here. So here you can see that in this top section outlines what the person owns. So that's their assets. They've got a debit account, a high interest account, a just in case fund or an emergency pot of money, and some superannuation. So their total assets are $3,410. And then what they owe is they've got some credit card, $480 that's owing on their credit card, and they've got some HECS debt, $45,000. So it's just an example of how you could set that out. Doesn't need to be anything complicated or fancy. You can do it pen and paper, whatever suits you. I find it easier to keep everything in Excel, and it adds everything up for you, and you can add lines, delete them, but really useful to take a snapshot of where you are currently before you start setting yourself some goals, because it might help you to kind of look at, okay, what are my priorities now that I can see a complete picture. A lot of us don't do this, and I find this is probably one of the most powerful activities to do. It's also helpful for when you're wanting to measure your progress towards a goal. You can check in and sort of complete where we have this column that says the month of May. You could complete this every month, every week, every quarter, to actually see your progress. So it may be that you set a goal. If I was looking at this scenario, I'd be wanting to pay that credit card off first, because you've got interest payments that you don't need to be paying. So any extra money would go towards that. So I'd be setting myself a goal around paying that off in, X amount of months, whatever would be realistic. And then each month you could track that progress. So you would see that balance come down, and that would be really satisfying and motivating. So a little bit of an idea there. So yeah, start by understanding your own financial situation. And then you can start by prioritizing and identifying those goals. So put aside, so goal number one, to put aside 1 month's worth of living expenses, whatever that amount might be for yourself. really important. That actually stops the debt cycle. So if you are somebody who does have credit card debt, you'd be wanting to make sure that you were able to achieve that first. So if something did come along, you didn't then reach for credit to help you with that, that you were able to, use those emergency funds. So that would be a good first goal, paying off the credit card debt. And then perhaps if it's for you, maybe it's saving for a holiday to see family or whatever that next goal might be. So this is a bit of an example of how you could sort of structure, maybe you document some of your goals. As you can see here, which I usually prompt when we've got live audience, is the goals that I've written in the little yellow boxes. They're not SMART. So you'd be wanting to really clearly outline what is the date, what is the amount for achieving each of those. So yeah, so hopefully that's helpful too. And you can it kind of tells the story. If we're starting here in May, you'd be tracking this each month, and December, this is where I want to be by December. This is what I would want my balance sheet to look like. So yeah, hopefully that's a helpful way to visualize it. Then after you've I guess in here, you've defined what it is that you want to achieve. The next step is to then actually to develop a budget or plan to achieve those goals. So you could add a section to your budget which has the name of each of the goals. So emergency fund, paying off debt, saving for home deposit, paying off a mortgage, whatever that might be. And I'd really recommend only having 3 at a time. Otherwise you don't really make much progress. You're only putting small amounts of money into all of them. And it's better to make significant progress, move on. Once your emergency fund is built up, then that's done. So then you've got extra money to be going towards paying off the debt. And then once that's done, then you'll have extra to be saving up for your home deposit. So put a bit of a budget together. Here in this spreadsheet is an example of the budget sort of structure that I use. But again, it's really up to you how you'd like to do that, if it is in Excel or by hand or by an app. But it's about looking at, okay, what is all the money that I've got coming in and what is the amount that is going out? So you can then work out how much you can be putting towards each of those goals. So make a plan for that so that you can achieve them. And it also helps you to then challenge whether your goal is SMART or not. So part of that SMART acronym is achievable. So it may be that you first set yourself a goal thinking, oh, I want to save up this amount or pay off this debt by December. But once you work it through your budget, you might actually find, oh, I might actually be able to pay it off earlier, or it may take longer. So it kind of helps you to kind of go through that iterative process and challenge it too. And also, look at your budget and see where you might be able to free up, where there's any spare margin for things as well that you could give up so you can achieve those goals quicker. So this is where you get that sense of control and empowerment that we were talking about earlier with the slide. It's, giving those reins back to you and you taking control. It's very satisfying. What I would recommend when you are doing budgeting is to use the zero-based budgeting method, which means like right up in the title slide for tonight's webinar, talked about giving every dollar a purpose. That's really what we do with zero-based budgeting. So we have all of our income. So here we can see got $5,000 of income coming in. We want to give every dollar of that a purpose in our expenses. So what that means is that we end up having a resulting $0 left over. Every dollar is given a purpose. So we've got, it could be that you're giving some food, utilities, housing, transportation, insurances, debt, fun, miscellaneous, although I don't usually like miscellaneous, but you want to give it a specific purpose. So that's the best way to do it. And then what you would do, as I shared in the one slide before, is you would include, so here they have debt. That might be one of your goals, your financial goals. So including those goals in your budget gives that goal a plan or a way of achieving it. So there's really 4 key buckets when you're looking at your money as well, in terms of another way of sort of thinking about it and categorizing it. So I know I'm giving you lots of different options and tools and frameworks. Some will really resonate with you and some might not. So, find the one that really helps. But really we've got, needs, So things like rent, food, bills, really important. So that's our priority number one. Then we've got wants. So, you know, the extra fun things, but we can do without them. So our discretionary things. Then we've got our goals, savings, debt, investing, and we've got giving, donations and gifts. So you can, these number 2, 3, and 4, you can modify and change how much you're doing of each of those depending on what changes in your life. So, but it can be helpful to kind of think about and categorize them as those. Helps you to challenge some of your expenses too sometimes. Often we think, oh, I've got to have this, or I couldn't live without it. But when you really think about it, well, it's more of a want than a need. So there's that discretion and flexibility. And if you consider some of your goals and, you know, you desire to achieve them, you could actually give up that thing for a season, you know, for a couple of months or a year, and enable you to achieve a particular goal. So sometimes it's hard, but it's about, you know, challenging it and also challenging your own mindset. Often when we're looking at some of our longer term goals, sometimes they can seem so big, and this can be overwhelming and demotivating. But what can be helpful is if we kind of work back from some of those longer term goals. So the example here, if we're wanting to save $100,000 for a home deposit, breaking that down, then okay, so that means $20,000 over 5 years. You know, is this possible? If not, you know, do you extend the time frame? Do you change the goal? Do you reduce it? Do you, you know, reframe or think about, you know, what is the size of the house that you're going to buy, the value? So yeah, it's kind of challenging and thinking through what are your options and what is possible. Could you increase income? Could you reduce your expenses in order to achieve that? If that's really not possible, then does the figure need to change, or does the time horizon need to change? So yes, so thinking those things through and breaking it down can be really helpful. To also help you to stay motivated is, you know, really important to track your progress, like I had in a couple of slides before, where we had this sort of financial snapshot of where you are now, and then measuring and your progress to your goals is really helpful, seeing those numbers. Celebrating small victories where you can is really important too, to keep up that motivation, and staying flexible and adaptable, as I've just talked through as well. Finding a support system can be really important too. So if you've got people in your life, if it's partners, family, friends, who you could share some of your financial goals with. I know it is quite personal, but that they can then support you. So if you're making maybe changing some of the way that you're living or the decisions you're making in order to achieve a goal, they can help support instead of challenging you. And remind yourself of the benefits. You know, look at, you know, what you're achieving. I had a student a couple of years in a session who shared a example of what they did when they were working through their goals. They called it champagne goals. So they would actually write a goal on a champagne bottle. If you don't drink, you could put it on a special chocolate or an activity or something else, but they would actually go to the cupboard and they would then drink that bottle of champagne when that goal was achieved. So I thought that was really nice. So symbolic things like that can be really nice, particularly if you're sharing the goals and working towards them with somebody else. Really helps. So I guess this is really to sort of, again, highlight and illustrate that if you don't have a clear goal, where we can see on the left-hand side, we're just circling round and round and round. Like, for example, we've got just saying increasing my run distance each week, rather than saying running a marathon in 2025. So you can see how more powerful it is to be specific about what it is that you're wanting to achieve. So save and pay off $200 per fortnight, and then that's going to really, rather, you know, to pay off $5,000 of credit card debt by 2025 can be more powerful. Now, just to finish off, I wanted to sort of share a little bit of an activity, which is looking at all of, you know, examples of goals. You can see all of messy on this slide, you know, paying off credit card debt, paying off a loan, investing, saving for a house, saving for retirement, saving for a holiday. So this is quite common that we often carry all of these different things that we're wanting to achieve. Some of these you might relate to, some of them they might not. But what I was sharing earlier was a much better way than just trying to hold all of these and achieve them all at once, is to prioritize them. And similar to what I've shared already is I would encourage you, where we can see, so I've kind of organized them into columns in terms of priorities. So firstly, saving for emergencies. So if you have any consumer debt other than your mortgage, certainly having $1,000 set aside for emergencies is really important. It's going to stop that cycle of debt and engaging with debt and payday loans and all of those things. So whilst you are paying off the minimum of all of those, save up for your emergency $1,000. Then pay off those loans as quickly as you can. So putting everything you can into it, pay the minimum of all of them, and then I'd be suggesting taking the, rank them from lowest to highest, because you want to build momentum and get that sense of satisfaction that you've achieved and you've cleared a debt. So if you, in this example, like you've got a credit card, maybe it's $500, you've got a personal loan for $2,000, and you've got a car loan for $10,000. I would pay them off in that order. So pay minimum on all, but then put everything else into that credit card till it's gone. Cut it up and it's gone. And then work them through. So I wouldn't even be looking to any of these other goals until that was done. So that's, once you've got rid of all of that and that debt is no longer part of your life, then that's a really great place to get to. It may be that you're starting off somewhere else along this line already. So maybe you don't have any debt at all. And I would then be encouraging a goal around, having an emergency fund is a really good personal hygiene. So having, 3 to 6 months of expenses set aside in a high yield interest account. So you've got that set aside. Then it would be about, saving for a house. And looking at what that is and what does that mean in terms of the amount and the time horizon. So putting money aside for that. Once you're in a position to then buy the home, you'll be then working towards paying it off. And whilst you're working, so I have saving for a retirement here, but here in Australia we have superannuation. So once you're working, you will already be making some contributions to retirement. So that's great. And once you've got to this stage, putting, 15%, we've got 11.5 going up to 12% this year, but really topping that up. So it's, 15% of your earnings are going towards retirement is a good thing to do, but only doing it at this stage once you've already achieved these other things. So here you could be doing a couple of multiple things. But you'll be paying off your home as quickly as you can. You're adding in that additional amount for retirement, and then you could be doing some additional investing outside of your retirement superannuation, and saving for holidays and things like that, working out that balance. And it's really personal in terms of what you want to achieve and what your own personal situation is. So hopefully that helps, just a little bit of an exercise there of, illustrating how confusing it can be and overwhelming when we've got all of these different goals, but to really give them priorities and working through them in that way can really help and alleviate it. So I hope that's really been helpful, and that you can perhaps give yourself a little bit of an opportunity this week or in the next week to think through what are some of your financial goals. Perhaps some of what I've talked about has prompted you to think about what they are and how you might then structure and make sure that they're smart, and where you might write them down or set up a spreadsheet to help you to work towards them. If there's anything that you would like to talk through with me, as we've kind of very quickly touched on financial goal setting, if you would like any help, working through what your goals are or setting up a personal balance sheet or a budget, as I mentioned, I'm here through the SCPA. They're able to provide sessions with me for you for free. So you can just contact skills@scpa.net.au and ask if you could have a financial session with Liz McLardy, and they'll get you in touch with me if that's something you think would be helpful. So we can have a look at anything that's a really confidential, bespoke session, really to help you, whatever you might be thinking or working through in terms of your finances. And if you aren't already, just a little reminder that you can become a CPA member. It gives you early access to workshops and resources. It's free, and this is the link so you can join up. Hope that's been helpful. Lovely. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and good luck setting your financial goals, and don't overcomplicate it. And yeah, look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.